I was hugging the toilet, feeling utterly miserable, when John called.
Room 305, Don Lai Hotel. I want some of your red bean porridge.
Clutching my painfully aching stomach, I struggled to speak.
I'm having my period today. My stomach hurts.
If your stomach hurts, take some medicine. Isn't there a pill that's supposed to work well? I'm just asking if you're coming or not.
No, go home tonight.
This was the 5th time John had mentioned breaking up with me. Swallowing the bitterness in my heart, I softened my voice as much as possible.
I'll be there soon.
When I arrived with the thermos and pushed open the door to the private room, the lively chatter inside abruptly ceased. Several unfamiliar faces turned to look at me, making me feel extremely uncomfortable. I looked up towards the window seat. John always liked to sit there. This time was no exception.
Why are you so slow?
John leaned on the sofa, reeking of alcohol. His lips still bore traces of bright lipstick, making his face look even more defiant. I calmly took out a tissue and wiped the marks from his mouth.
I'm not tolerant of painkillers, so I was delayed a bit.
John finally lifted his eyelids and glanced at me. His thin lips parted, not to ask about my condition, but to say,
Don't you think it's time to cut your hair?
Maybe not. I heard Emily plans to grow her hair long.
Emily, John's white moonlight. A model who recently gained fame abroad. Also my hairstylist for the past 3 years. John's gaze was deep, as if hiding some emotion. But he quickly masked it. He suddenly stood up, walked past me, and picked up a glass of wine from the round table.
Last drink, then we're done.
The few people present, who were used to staying up all night, were somewhat displeased to hear him ending the night so early.
Why in so soon tonight?
Our little John has to go home and play housekeeper.
I've been with John for 3 years, without any status. None of them respected me. Behind my back, they always mocked me as John's free housekeeper. This was the first time they openly ridiculed me. Before I could react, John suddenly slammed his glass on the table, his face darkening.
I said we're done, everyone go home.
Without waiting for a response, he grabbed my wrist and left the room. Back at the apartment, he pushed me onto the sofa. His damp breath brushed against my ear. There was no tender atmosphere, only a cold command.
Close your eyes.
I obediently closed my eyes, letting him kiss the 2 red moles. That was the only part of me that resembled Emily. And the most tenderness he could offer me. But today, he was different. He didn't leave immediately after kissing me as usual. Instead, he lingered near my lips for a long time.
I didn't dare open my eyes, my fingers tightly clutching my collar.
Perhaps I held on too tightly, and the top button of my collar popped off. A chill spread across my collarbone. Instinctively, I reached out to cover it, but John was faster. He pinned my hands above my head with one hand. With the other, he unbuttoned the second button of my shirt.
Please, don't look.
But he never listened to me. His warm hand pulled open my shirt. The hideous, shrunken scars were slowly revealed to John.
Why are you crying? Such a buzzkill.
He suddenly sat up and lit a cigarette.
Go make me some noodles.
While I was busy in the kitchen, he leaned against the glass door, smoking, and suddenly asked,
Those scars, were they from that accident in high school?
Was it an accident? But I clearly remembered when Emily splashed that liquid on me, she had a smile on her lips. Yes. Emily wasn't just John's white moonlight. She was also the one who bullied me for 3 years in high school. We were all classmates back then. After one midterm exam, with my excellent grades, I was assigned to sit next to John. According to the teacher's policy, I had to give John 10 practice questions every day. Back then, John was even more rebellious than he is now. To meet the requirement, I had to follow him around with the practice sheets like a little follower. He was very impatient with me, always scolding me.
Shorty, can you get lost?
I was very chubby back then. In class, I had a nickname, Short Fatty. But John preferred to call me Shorty. Emily was the class beauty, tall and slim, and his childhood friend. But during that time, Emily was infatuated with the class president of the sports class and didn't interact much with John. Their relationship seemed to improve when John finally started doing the 10 practice questions seriously. My nightmare began without warning. When I brought the noodles to John, he didn't touch them. Instead, he blew out a ring of smoke and casually asked,
Why didn't you get the scars removed? I remember the school compensated your family $50,000, enough for 4 or 5 surgeries.
It was enough. But that money went to my dad. He used it as a down payment for a house. While I was in pain on the hospital bed, he was peeling an apple beside me.
Sophia, the doctor said not getting the scars removed won't affect your life. As long as you don't wear those strappy dresses, no one will notice. Girls shouldn't dress so revealingly anyway. If you cover up, you'll be safer outside.
After peeling the apple, he tried to hand it to me. But seeing my hands wrapped in bandages, he awkwardly smiled.
I'll save this apple for your brother.
Even after 5 or 6 years, thinking about these things still made my chest ache. Physical wounds can heal, but the cracks in my heart only fester and rot. Watching John eat the noodles seriously, I lightly smiled.
Maybe because I'm afraid of pain.
John paused but didn't look up again. After quickly finishing, he stood up.
Tonight, I'm staying at East Garden.
East Garden, where he spent time with his other lovers. He never let me go there. Before leaving, he threw a bank card on the table. His eyes deep, his tone as harsh as ever.
There's $30,000 in here, use it for the scar removal surgery. Don't you find it disgusting to look at every day?
It is quite disgusting. I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Expressionless, I reattached the fallen button. Then, with a disinfectant wipe, I repeatedly cleaned the areas John had kissed. Until the skin turned red and stung, I stopped. Dealing with a playboy like John. How could it not make me feel sick? 8 years ago, on that morning, when Emily first cornered me in the bathroom, I was holding John's freshly completed homework. The workbook was stomped into a puddle. I stumbled and fell to the ground.
Sorry, I didn't notice someone behind me. You're so good-natured, you won't hold it against me, right?
I didn't hold it against her. Her privileged background left me with no courage to fight back. All I could do was imitate John's handwriting and redo the homework.
Your imitation skills are terrible, it doesn't look like my writing at all. Didn't I finish it yesterday?
These days, his attitude towards me had suddenly improved a lot.
Did you lose it?
I bit my lip and nodded, tears uncontrollably streaming down.
So what if you lost it? Why are you crying?
Seeing my tears flow even more, he clicked his tongue, snatched the pen from my hand.
No need for you to copy, I'll write it again, okay?
Then, a packet of warmed-up soft candy fell into my arms.
If you're bored, eat candy, don't cry anymore.
The wrapper had strawberry patterns. Even wrapped in coarse sand, it still tasted sweet.
Next time you take John's things.
In the evening glow, Emily poured the remaining candy over my head.
I'll make you pick it out of the slop bucket. Fat pigs love slop, don't they?
The girls' piercing laughter echoed in the narrow alley. After that day, I became the outcast of the class. Mockery, pranks, and more came flooding in.
I went to the teacher once. She looked at me with a mix of doubt.
Emily is kind and the top student. Why would she target you? Sophia, are you overthinking it? Actually, the teacher always thought you were too introverted and didn't like to interact with classmates.
No one wanted to be near me. Except John. Only he would greet me like a normal classmate, ask me math questions. Occasionally, he would give me some snacks. Even if I refused, he would still throw them into my arms with a scowl. I thought John was different. In fact, he was indeed different. Because he was even more hypocritical than others. In the morning, I was woken up by John. He was wearing a well-tailored black suit, looking pale, standing by the bed coldly staring at me.
I called you 5 or 6 times, but you didn't wake up. Sophia, are you a pig? Sleeping so soundly?
I couldn't sleep because of the pain last night, so I took some melatonin.
John frowned. Then he leaned down and felt my forehead.
I have to go to the office today. Where did you put my tie?
I organized all his clothes. Without me, he couldn't even find a tie.
I'll get it for you.
I lifted the blanket, intending to get out of bed. Unexpectedly, the diary I had forgotten on the blanket fell first. My heart tightened. Fortunately, the yellowed, creased cover made John withdraw his hand from picking it up. He glanced at it with disgust.
How many years have you used this notebook? Can't you afford a new one?
I said nothing, silently putting the diary back on the bedside table. John was a head taller than me. When tying his tie, I had to look up. His gaze lingered on my eyebrows, as if searching for something.
I remember, in high school, you didn't have a mole at the corner of your eye.
I still don't. That's a scar from a repair surgery.
That cup of liquid was meant to be thrown at my face. The tie was suddenly pulled from my hands.
Clumsy, I'll do it myself.
Avoiding the topic. That was almost everyone's attitude towards those past events. If you don't mention it, it seems like it never happened. How could that be? Watching John's tall, straight back, a sneer crossed my heart.
Next week is my birthday, don't leave after work, I'll pick you up.
I have to work overtime that day.
My chin was lifted.
If you don't go, you can move out tonight.
He did it on purpose. Knowing that I wouldn't go where Emily was. I lowered my eyes, hiding the turmoil within.
I'll go.
My compromise didn't please John.
Sophia, will you agree to anything as long as I don't kick you out?
His gaze was deep, as if trying to see through my heart.
Yes.
My affection was flawless. In the end, he looked away first.
Sophia, I can't promise you anything.
I stared at his slightly reddened ears for a few seconds, my lips curving.
I don't need those.
The smile didn't reach my eyes. Vows of eternal love are for lovers. But I don't love you, John. Someone who betrays true feelings doesn't deserve anyone's affection. John's birthday party was held at the hotel where I worked. It was also the most profitable business under the John Corporation. At the party, John was all smiles and laughter, while I was busy like a part-time waitress. Only in the restroom could I catch a moment's breath.
I heard you're the manager at this hotel?
Emily, dressed in a high-end gown, appeared behind me, her demeanor even more arrogant than in high school.
Did John arrange that for you?
I wanted to leave, but she blocked my way.
They all say you've changed a lot. I don't think you've changed much since high school. Still the same lowly person.
The pain in my lower abdomen kept me calm.
But it's a pity, even if you make yourself look like me, John will never like you.
How do you know he won't?
John would like you? Have you forgotten what John said in our senior year?
Of course, I remembered. It was Christmas Eve. John was holding the apple one gave him when he spoke.
How could I ever like that shorty?
He casually tossed the apple into the trash, then ruffled Emily's hair.
Don't you know why I'm nice to her?
No idea.
Around the corner, I was pinned to the ground. John was oblivious.
She's just a tool to make you jealous.
A hard shoe sole pressed against my cheek, grinding repeatedly. I cried in pain, while they laughed and talked.
As long as you don't see that athlete, I won't bother with her.
If Sophia and I fell into the water, who would you save?
With her build, she can float up on her own.
Emily's laughter was arrogant and piercing.
I remember you cried so hard that day, with snot and tears all over your face. I still have the video from that time. Want to relive your youth? Besides that day, there's also you barking like a dog, slapping yourself.
My body trembled uncontrollably.
Scared now? After all these years, you haven't improved at all? Oh, maybe a bit. At least, you don't cry and call me sister anymore.
What did you say?
Perhaps my gaze was too fierce. She instinctively took 2 steps back, but her mouth remained defiant.
Oh, you dare glare at me? Is it that sister you always talked about but never showed up that gives you confidence? Your sister didn't die abroad, did she?
Slap! I slapped her with all my strength. She staggered a few steps, hitting the sink. When she looked up again, her fair face bore a red mark.
Sophia, you dare hit. Ugh.
I quickly stepped forward, grabbing her by the throat. Footsteps approached from outside the restroom. I leaned in close to Emily's ear, speaking slowly.
Do you believe that if we both fell into the water now, John wouldn't even look at you?
The birthday party was ruined by me. Emily's intermittent sobs came from the small private room, mixed with insults from a few rich kids directed at me. It's no wonder they were so angry. In their circle, Emily was the goddess everyone adored. And now, she was suddenly hit by me, the substitute. I even heard someone shouting, saying they wanted to teach me a lesson. The door opened. John walked in.
The doctor said Emily might have a scar on her face.
Yes, I did it on purpose.
I twisted the ring on my middle finger. This ring was the engagement ring he planned to give Emily 3 years ago. But before he could give it, Emily went abroad to pursue her modeling dream. Later, one drunken night, he casually threw the ring to me.
Don't you know she's a model and relies on her looks?
Of course, I knew. I wanted to destroy everything she cared about. Whether it was her face or John's love.
Are you still holding a grudge over what happened in high school? She was a bit willful back then, always bullying.
John. If Emily and I fell into the water at the same time, who would you save?
John was stunned for a few seconds, then his eyes turned cold.
Sophia, I told you I can't give you any promises.
That's good.
Then I stood up, placing the ring, bank card, and keys on the table.
In these 2 or 3 years, I haven't spent a penny of yours. All the gifts you gave me are in that apartment.
John's expression turned even darker.
What do you mean?
Being a substitute is actually quite tiring. I don't want to do it anymore.
Just before leaving the room, John called out to me.
Sophia, are you sure?
I never go back on my word.
The only response was the resolute sound of the door closing. After leaving the hotel, John didn't contact me for half a month. Only Emily sent a few harassing messages, usually with photos of John. He was still frequenting bars and clubs, as if he didn't care about my departure at all. It didn't affect me at all. The next day, I sent my resignation letter to my boss's email. That night, John called. I didn't answer. In the following days, he started texting me.
Where's my black shirt? Your resignation won't be approved. Come back to work. Sophia, you really have guts, not answering my calls. You begged to be my substitute, now you want to quit just because you're tired? Come out and talk to me face to face. I'm downstairs at your place. Can we meet?
When I received this message, I was sitting on the balcony petting my cat. Looking down, I saw a black Porsche parked by the road. My phone kept vibrating. The cat licked my finger, seemingly curious about what was happening. I petted its head.
Sister is training a dog. I was going to turn the arrogant wolf into the most loyal dog.
The Porsche stayed longer and longer. Until one day, John got out of the car. Compared to his previous glamorous self, he looked much more disheveled now. I watched him cross the road, step by step, walking into the trap I had set.
He's coming up.
On the other end of the phone was my longtime psychologist, Michael.
Do you really have to cut your wrist?
I looked at the fruit knife on the table. Images of shocking wounds flashed before my eyes. I suppressed my bitter emotions.
Of course.
Don't cut too deep, it could damage the tendons. Anyway, there's plasma available.
The blade cut through the delicate skin. Just a shallow cut made me break out in a cold sweat from the pain. Watching the blood beads form on the wound, what I thought of was a bathtub stained with blood. And that deep, bone-revealing cut. How desperate must one be to inflict such a severe wound on oneself? But clearly, she was so afraid of pain as a child.
Sophia. My sister. The sister who would cry in my arms out of fear of injections. Endured so much suffering where I couldn't see. I'll never forget those sleepless nights. She sat quietly in the dark, her eyes dull and lifeless. Do you hear them? They're all cursing me, they all want me gone. Don't listen to them.
My hands trembled as I held her tightly, trying to suppress my sobs.
Don't you want your sister anymore? We were born together, but separated by our parents' divorce. Taking completely different paths.
She suddenly broke down in my arms, crying uncontrollably. Apologizing repeatedly. Why? Why do victims always apologize, while the perpetrators roam free?
5 years ago, I found Sophia at our grandmother's house. She was curled up in a corner of the bed, her hands tightly bound with cloth strips. As soon as I touched the cloth strips, Grandma shrieked.
Don't untie her, she'll go crazy if you do. I don't know what got into her, she stopped going to school, always thinking about ending it.
Sophia's skinny arms were covered in scars from nails and knife cuts.
Sophia, your sister is back. Can you look at me?
Holding back my tears, I brushed aside her messy hair. The large atrophic scars spreading from her face to her collarbone left me stunned. My head buzzed.
Oh, she got those at school. Apparently, her classmates were playing around, and mistook some acid for water, splashing it on her. We spent a lot of money treating her. Your dad didn't work for months.
I can't remember what else I heard. I only remember. When I took Sophia out of that dark, damp room, she silently shed tears.
Let me go, please let me go.
She resisted leaving. But her eyes, filled with pain, were pleading for help.
I tried to seek justice, but hit a wall every time. The principal was impatient.
Isn't 50,000 enough?
The police sighed.
They're minors, we can only educate them.
The Education Bureau avoided us. How ridiculous. The victim trapped in a cage. The perpetrators protected. So, I began planning revenge on those school bullies. John was the most mentioned name in my sister's diary. She said he was tough but kind, a good deskmate. Later, his mask was torn off. His hypocritical, arrogant face became the last straw that broke my sister. When I learned John was looking for a substitute for Emily, I knew. My chance had come. For someone like him, an arrogant playboy. True love was the hardest to find. Once he fell in love, it would be fatal. On an ordinary morning, I cut my hair short. Just like Emily's. Following my boss, I walked into the private room.
John, this is our new manager, Sophia.
I tucked my hair behind my ear, revealing the mole at the corner of my eye. In John's casual glance, I smiled shyly.
Long time no see, John.
At that moment, I felt a bit nervous. Although Sophia and I were twins, we looked quite different. To look more like Emily, I had some minor cosmetic procedures. I feared my Sophia identity would be questioned. However, John just frowned.
Sophia? That name sounds familiar.
He had forgotten. My expression turned cold. My sister was still suffering in hell. How could the guilty be redeemed? But it didn't matter. I would carve the name Sophia into his heart. So that every time he remembered it, he would feel pain and regret. When I woke up, the hospital room was empty. As expected. In the game of love, the one in control wouldn't be easily swayed. I instinctively moved my wrist. It hurt. And I couldn't exert any strength. It was probably a tendon injury. Unable to use both hands, I had to change clothes with one hand. As I bent down to put on my shoes, the door to the hospital room suddenly opened. John, holding a thermos, met my eyes.
Where are you going?
I hid my surprise and spoke calmly.
Home.
The thermos hit the bedside table with a loud noise.
Home! Stay here!
John forcefully pulled me back to the bed. When his fingers touched the bandage on my wrist, he paused. Then, he suddenly hugged me tightly.
Sophia, can I answer the question you asked me again?
But I don't want to hear it anymore.
I tried to struggle, but he held me tightly.
I choose you. I can't lose you, Sophia.
Just break the habit.
It's not a habit.
You hate me, you always want to get rid of me, don't you?
No, I don't hate you. I just don't believe, because no one has ever loved me as unconditionally as you do.
Without the halo of family power, John was actually not happy. An absent father, a domineering mother, and a childhood sweetheart who was distant made him fearful of love. He only knew how to use fleeting flings to cover up his inner loneliness and confusion.
If you don't believe, then let me go.
Tears wet John's shoulder. I used my vulnerability to push him away.
I'm not that cheap. I won't cling to you anymore, and you don't have to constantly doubt my intentions.
It's not like that. The moment you left, I regretted it. I couldn't sleep all night, thinking about you. I love you, Sophia. Every minute and second outside the emergency room, I was terrified that you would leave me like this. I know you've suffered a lot. Give me a chance to make it up to you, okay?
His eyes were red, and he lowered his head to kiss me. I turned my head to avoid it.
But I have depression. No one can tolerate a person with depression.
It's okay, I'll be with you. This time, let me love you.
He kissed my wrist. Tears blurred my vision. I pretended to wipe my tears, hiding the coldness in my eyes. Just loving me is not enough. I want you to uncover the past you've been hiding for years. After being betrayed by everyone, to love but never obtain. After being discharged, I moved in with John. Still the same apartment. The difference was, John brought my cat over.
Aren't you allergic to cat hair?
I looked at him in surprise as he set up the cat tree.
The doctor said, interacting with animals can improve your mood. Sophia, I want to make you happy.
After that, he seemed like a changed person. He would squeeze into the small kitchen to make breakfast for me. And would sleep on the sofa in the living room every night, worried about me. Even though my attitude towards him was sometimes good, sometimes bad. He never lost his temper again. Seeing the time was right. On a warm morning, I took the initiative to tug at his shirt.
Can you take me to see the sea?
This was the first time I had made a request of him. John bent down to hug me tightly, smiling like a child.
Sure, let's go now.
John had a yacht. It was docked at the pier for his rich friends to enjoy. Today, a group of people were having a party. The organizer was Emily. When he saw her, John immediately shielded me behind him.
What are you doing here?
The questioning tone made Emily's smile falter. Fortunately, someone else interrupted, preventing the atmosphere from becoming awkward. While they chatted, John held my hand and hurriedly explained.
Sophia, I didn't know they would be here, let's leave.
It's okay, the more the merrier.
But you and Emily.
In front of everyone, I slowly leaned my head on John's shoulder.
As long as I'm with you, nothing else matters.
Perhaps seeing that I was in a good state, John unusually let me go out alone to relax. I avoided the crowded areas and leaned against the stairs on the second floor, enjoying the breeze. Behind me, I heard the sound of high heels approaching. I turned around and smirked.
Thick skin is good, it doesn't scar.
You wretch.
Emily raised her hand, but I grabbed her by the neck and pinned her against the railing. Her floral dress fluttered in the sea breeze.
Are you crazy?
Yes, I have a mental illness. Do you think if I push you over while having an episode, I won't be held legally responsible?
You wouldn't dare.
Emily said, but there was a hint of panic in her eyes.
Just kidding. After all, we were classmates for 3 years, you wouldn't be mad, right?
Sophia, don't be so arrogant. You're just relying on John's temporary interest in you.
Footsteps echoed from the corner. I smiled slightly.
But John said he loves me.
Emily's expression turned ugly. She gritted her teeth.
Don't forget, I still have those videos of you. Do you think John would be disgusted if he knew about them?
At the top of the stairs, a pair of white sneakers appeared. They were the birthday gift I had given John. I took a step back towards the railing. Then, with a provocative smile, I said,
Guessing is boring, why not test it?
You!
As Emily's scream was cut short, I leaned back. The expected feeling of falling didn't happen.
Sophia!
I was pulled into a warm embrace by strong arms.
John, I didn't.
Get out!
Through the gap in his arms, I saw Emily's face turn pale. But John didn't seem to notice. He just covered my ears, his voice trembling as he comforted me.
Sophia, don't be afraid, I'll take you home.
That night, John stayed in the room and didn't leave. We lay side by side on the bed. After a long time, he suddenly hugged me from behind.
Sophia, when did you start feeling down?
I don't remember. Since high school, I've always felt down.
The arm around my waist tightened, but I pretended not to notice.
At home, after my dad remarried, he didn't pay much attention to me, only scolding me for bad grades. At school, I didn't have many friends. Only you were willing to talk to me.
I wasn't good to you back then. Was it worth it?
I looked down at his hand, noticing a small brown scar on his long fingers. It was from his first attempt at cooking when he got burned. When I applied the medicine, he grimaced in pain. But he never mentioned giving up cooking.
It was worth it. I know you have a tough exterior but a soft heart.
John leaned close to my ear, whispering a promise.
Sophia, I will never let you down again.
Adult promises are often a mix of truth and lies. John said he loved me, but in the middle of the night, he opened the drawer. He took out that old diary. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, feeling nothing inside. His tough exterior and soft heart were never for me, but for Emily. As long as Emily shed a few tears, he would immediately doubt my intentions. Unfortunately, that diary was a gift I had prepared for him long ago. Every word and sentence was filled with a young girl's tender feelings. Every line and page expressed sincere love for him. The deeper his doubts about me, the stronger his guilt would become. In the following days, John was almost completely accommodating to me, taking me wherever he went. Emily couldn't reach him by phone. She started sending me harassing messages, threatening me with those videos to leave John. I didn't tell anyone. But the nightmares in my deteriorating mental state made John suspicious. With my deliberate guidance, he saw those messages. They were all from anonymous numbers. He mistakenly thought I had been bullied by people from the streets before. His gaze turned from pity to anger.
Sophia, don't worry, I'll make those who bullied you pay.
He was eager to know how much I had suffered. He wanted to seek justice for me. 3 days later, I received a message from a private investigator.
John went to Emily's film set.
Soon, news of their argument spread in the circle. Late at night, John was finally brought back by his driver. I waited for him in the rain with an umbrella. He reeked of alcohol. When he saw me, his eyes suddenly turned red, and he hugged me tightly.
Sophia, let's get married. Let's leave the past behind and live well from now on. I will never let you get hurt again.
Can we leave it behind? The raindrops hitting the umbrella splashed onto my pajamas. Everything was so similar to the day my sister harmed herself. In the morning, the weather was fine. The morning light filled the sofa, and she sat cross-legged on it. Just like when we were kids, she pouted at me.
Sis, I want some steamed buns.
So ordinary and natural. No matter how many times I recall, I can't find anything unusual about her then. The storm came quickly. When I stepped through the rain and opened the door again, the empty room had only a trail of blood, winding to my feet. John said he would arrange a grand proposal on my birthday. He wouldn't reveal any other details. When I pressed him, he would just pinch my face, a roguish smile on his lips.
It'll be grand, you'll never forget it.
A week before my birthday, John's mother came to see me. I expected a scene where the wealthy mother-in-law throws a check at me. Instead, I received a prenuptial agreement. I opened the agreement. The first clause caught my eye. The wife must resign after marriage, hand over financial control, and focus on being a full-time housewife, taking care of her husband. John's mother sipped her coffee, her tone condescending.
Oh, and the children you have will be raised by me. Someone from a poor background like you can't raise good children. My grandchildren can only...
I can't do that.
I pushed the agreement back onto the table. John's mother raised an eyebrow, glancing at me.
If you can't accept such conditions, how dare you think of marrying into our family?
It's not that I insist on marrying, it's that John insists on marrying me.
John's mother sneered.
Years ago, there were many girls like you clinging to John's father, using some push and pull tactics, then acting all high and mighty, causing a scene, but in the end, it's all for money, isn't it? If John wasn't so determined to marry you, I would have gotten rid of you long ago. Do you know how I got rid of those girls?
How could I not know? Back then, after Sophia was discharged, she had a chance to go back to school. But some women, claiming to be parents of classmates, came to the hospital. Under the guise of the school's best interest, they forced Sophia to sign a withdrawal form. Those women were sent by John's mother. She was just afraid Sophia would cause a scene at school, affecting John's college entrance exams.
So, while I'm being nice, sign the agreement.
Our conversation was interrupted by John's sudden appearance. Without even looking at his mother, he grabbed my hand.
Sophia, let's go home.
John.
Her tone was sharp with the authority of a strict mother.
Your father, and I will never approve of her.
I don't need your approval. We never planned to invite you to the wedding anyway.
His mother's angry shout was cut off as he slammed the door shut. Back in the car, John's first reaction was to check if I had any injuries. I pulled my hand away from his grip, turning my face.
John, maybe.
No.
John firmly turned my face back, his deep eyes full of seriousness.
Sophia, you don't need to care about anyone else, just look at me.
I avoided John's approaching lips, lightly kissing his cheek.
Okay. Of course, I'll watch you. Watch you fall bit by bit.
On my birthday. It was the public launch event for the John Group. John, as the heir to the group, sat in the spokesperson's seat for the first time.
After introducing the company's new project, I might take up a bit of your time.
Under the flashing lights, he looked up at me in the front row. His gaze was gentle, with a hint of a smile.
Today is my girlfriend Sophia's birthday, and it's also one of the most important days of my life. So I want to.
Suddenly, whispers from the audience broke the silence of the venue.
There's some gossip in the entertainment industry about that popular model, Emily.
She was exposed for bullying classmates and maliciously throwing acid at a female classmate during school.
John's expression froze.
Someone must be targeting her. Emily is so beautiful and has a good personality. She doesn't seem like that kind of person.
Impossible. There are video screenshots and recordings of her bullying others.
Today's event is over.
The microphone was knocked over, and the harsh sound of feedback filled the venue. I sat quietly, watching John on stage, running towards me in a panic. His lips moved, as if trying to say something, but his voice was drowned out by the sudden sound from the speakers.
John, what right do you have to accuse me?
Sophia, don't listen.
Reaching out through the staff, he desperately tried to grab my hands. The ring box he was holding fell to the ground, rolling to my feet.
You were the one who gave me that bottle of acid.
Every word was a stab to the heart. I stood up abruptly, feeling dizzy. But the recording continued to play.
I didn't know it was acid, and you didn't say you were going to target Sophia.
Stop pretending. In our senior year, you said you liked seeing me jealous, deliberately bullying Sophia.
The speakers were hastily turned off by the staff. John finally reached me, a forced smile on his lips.
Sophia, I also arranged a citywide fireworks and light show. Let's go watch it together, okay?
His palms were sweaty, sticky and somewhat nauseating. I suddenly pulled my hand away and slapped him. John's head turned to the side, his neat hair falling messily over his eyes. The usually volatile air didn't get angry, but continued to coax me in a low voice.
If you don't want to watch, I'll take you home first. These things I'll handle at home.
John. We're done.
Then I turned to leave. He quickly got up.
Sophia, I can explain all of this.
But the media rushing to the front row blocked his path. After leaving the venue, I immediately hailed a cab. Sitting in the car back to the apartment, I received a call from Michael.
Did you see the trending news? Emily's career is over.
What's the big deal about a ruined career? As long as her backers don't fall, she'll always have a chance to make a comeback.
Outside, the sunset gradually faded. Before nightfall, the sky suddenly lit up with brilliant fireworks.
John really put a lot of effort into this proposal.
Yes, enough to make everyone remember.
I moved all my things out of John's house. John looked for me for a while. But he was soon tied up with company matters. I heard that Emily reported the John group for tax evasion to the tax authorities. She was always vindictive. And a few minutes after the exposé, I deliberately used John's account to post a proposal announcement on social media. She probably thought it was John standing up for me. So she chose a drastic mutual destruction method of revenge. During the investigation of the John group, the hotel was also exposed for failing health standards and mistreating employees. Soon after, various scandals about Emily spread online. Under public pressure, Emily's agency announced their termination of her contract. This clash of capital left both sides severely damaged. Due to the negative news, the John Hotel was forced to close for rectification. And Emily, after months of online abuse and capital suppression, issued a statement announcing her retirement from the industry. A week later, I returned to my old apartment to discuss the lease termination with the landlord. To make moving easier, I called Michael for help. Unexpectedly, we ran into John in the building. With a scruffy beard and a disheveled appearance, I almost didn't recognize him. The ground was littered with cigarette butts, silently proving he had been there for a long time.
Who is he?
John's whole body was tense, his bloodshot eyes fixed on Michael.
Could you help me move some things inside?
The small gesture seemed to provoke John. He took a big step forward and grabbed my wrist.
Sophia, do you know how long I've been looking for you?
The sharp pain spread from my wrist to my entire body.
Let her go.
Michael stepped forward, only to be pushed away by John.
Get lost. I'm talking to my woman, none of your business.
Let go. You're pressing on my wound.
The pressure on my wrist suddenly disappeared.
Sorry.
John wanted to say something, but his ringing phone interrupted him. He irritably hung up the call, frowning.
Sophia, come home with me, okay?
I thought I made myself clear that day.
You really want to break up with me?
I couldn't help but find it amusing. Was my earlier performance so convincing that it gave him the illusion that no matter what happens, I'll forgive him?
John, maybe you forgot, we were never officially a couple. I was just your on-call housekeeper.
John seemed to be pierced by my cold gaze, his expression darkening. As I was about to leave, he spoke again.
You actually always hated me, didn't you? If you wanted revenge, why not wait until after we got married? On the wedding day, in front of all the guests, expose my despicable past, and then as my wife, claim a portion of my assets. Why didn't you do that? Couldn't bear to or didn't want to?
His lips tightened, as if certain I had feelings for him.
I find it dirty.
What?
Whether it's you or your money. I find it all dirty.
The frequent vibration of the phone interrupted John's advances. I don't know what was said on the other end, but John's face changed. He hurriedly left. I gathered my things and got into Michael's car.
John's mother took some pills. She's in the hospital now.
I was stunned.
What happened? Such a proud career woman, why would she do that?
John's father held an emergency shareholders meeting, demanding a board reorganization.
I scrolled through the screen, and a photo appeared. A middle-aged man in a suit stood next to a young woman with a great figure. The woman was holding a young child. The photo was blurry, the child's face unclear. But from the clothes, it was clear he was a boy.
Looks like we won't need the photos we prepared.
Exposing John's father's affair abroad was part of our plan. But we didn't expect John's father to be so impatient. As soon as the company had issues, he brought his mistress and child back.
We don't need to worry about the John family for now.
I rubbed my aching stomach.
When is Emily going abroad?
Under her family's protection, Emily would go abroad for mental health reasons. How ironic. The real victims of depression are misunderstood, while the perpetrators use it as a shield, flaunting it.
More importantly,
Michael took the phone from my hand, looking serious.
Are you really not going to get treated? I asked the doctor. The tumor is benign. Surgery can.
We'll see.
I turned away, my fingers digging into my flesh. My atonement wasn't over. How could I deserve relief? My thoughts drifted back to the year my parents divorced. At first, my mother wanted to take Sophia. But I threw a tantrum, clinging to them, refusing to let go. So, Sophia compromised.
Mom, I want to stay home with Dad. Take my sister. Remember to visit me often.
Such a simple promise. And I didn't keep it. Held back by so-called studies and life's trivialities. Later, over the phone, I noticed her tone growing more and more despondent. But I didn't take it to heart. Enjoying the high school life that should have been Sophia's, ignoring her suffering. The guilt weighed on me like a mountain, making it hard to breathe. Only by touching the scar on my wrist could I find some relief. Soon. Once everyone got what they deserved, I'd go see Sophia. Willingly accepting her judgment. On the day Emily left the country, many people saw her off at the airport. No flowers or banners, just phones raised high, accompanied by curses and accusations. In her panic, she met my gaze.
It's you. You leaked my schedule.
The once glamorous model, now bare-faced, her features twisted with anger.
Sophia, don't think that clinging to John's leg will make you successful. He's struggling himself. When the John family falls, can he still survive in the industry?
I crossed my arms, speaking calmly.
Do you remember the question you asked in the hotel bathroom?
What?
I stepped closer, mimicking her actions from that time. My fingers brushed her tired face.
You asked, why hasn't my sister come to settle the score? Actually, she already has.
You?
Emily's eyes widened in shock. The next second, my cold gaze made her pupils contract.
New York is very free, perfect for you.
The smile didn't reach my eyes.
Sophia, and I wish you a safe journey.
After saying that, I left the airport. Later, I heard that Emily refused to leave. In the end, her family forcibly put her on the plane. After arriving in New York, she didn't go to the arranged host family. Instead, she hid in a hotel for several days. One night, she dragged her luggage and boarded a flight to Florida, seeking refuge with a former investor who had shown interest in her. The investor had prepared a welcome party for her. Wearing a high-end red dress, as she stepped out of the car, a disheveled drunk man rushed out from the corner.
Asians, get out of my city!
Then he threw a bottle of unknown liquid at her face. Screams echoed across the land of freedom. That night, Emily was rushed to the hospital. She lay in bed, her upper body wrapped in bandages. Seeing her condition, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed police officer looked regretful.
Tests show the bottle contained a strong acid used in medical research. The suspect said he found it in a trash can, thinking it was discarded water. Also, we found the suspect has bipolar disorder and intellectual disabilities. So sorry, ma'am, this was an accident.
The news of Emily's disfigurement and abandonment by her investor reached home the same day an investigation team entered John's company. Soon after, John's company was exposed for money laundering through construction projects. Several high-ranking officials, including John's parents, were taken to the police station for questioning. That afternoon, I went to the police station as a witness. As I was leaving, John was being brought in by the police. His eyes were lifeless, only lighting up when he saw me.
Can we talk?
He probably hadn't changed clothes in days, his white shirt full of wrinkles. I vaguely remembered our first meeting. In a luxurious private room, he lounged on the sofa, a cigarette between his fingers. His black shirt was perfectly pressed, without a single crease. Turns out, the arrogance built on wealth was so fragile.
What do you want to ask?
As before, his deep gaze lingered on my face.
That letter of accusation, you wrote it in my handwriting, didn't you?
Before I could answer, a self-deprecating smile crossed his eyes.
You imitated it so well. No matter how I explained, my father and the others didn't believe me. I remember you were quite dumb in high school, couldn't learn my handwriting even after 3 years as desk mates. How did you get so smart now? You're not really Sophia, are you? No, I'm not.
His doubt came too late. My unease had long been worn away by 3 years.
Then you. What's your real name?
Anna.
It had been so long since I heard my own name that it felt unfamiliar.
I'm Sophia's twin sister.
Anna. I should have realized it sooner.
Should you? But you couldn't even remember what Sophia looked like in high school. I didn't want to argue with him anymore and turned to leave.
Anna! Your revenge succeeded. I'm now abandoned by everyone, with nothing left. So, when I get out, can we start over?
At that moment, he looked like a child who had been abandoned, humbly begging for the warmth he once had.
John, you don't deserve it.
Those who play with hearts deserve to stay in a place of eternal darkness to atone for their sins. After leaving the police station, I bought a bouquet of tulips and went home. Back to the home where Sophia had ended her life. Since her passing, I hadn't dared to return. It started to drizzle outside. The first rain of spring. Each drop felt like it was hitting my heart. The wound in my heart stung with pain. I sat in the bathtub, holding the tulips. It was cold. Sophia must have felt cold too, back then. She was always afraid of pain and cold. And rarely complained. At most, she would tug at my sleeve, smiling and calling me sister.
Later, she stopped smiling, her body covered in scars. She also rarely called me sister anymore. Rightfully so. How could someone like me deserve to be her sister?
My consciousness began to blur. I seemed to hear Sophia's cries again. Her desperate questioning when she broke down.
Why am I the one who suffers?
Or her lifeless plea after being resuscitated multiple times.
Stop saving me, please. You can't save me.
Or maybe not. It was her first call of sister when she was learning to speak. Or the day we parted, when she clutched the tulip music box I gave her, tears in her eyes.
Anna, will you come back?
I wanted to answer her. But my mouth couldn't make a sound. I could only watch as her eyes dimmed.
I will come back. Sophia, I will come back.
I used all my strength to break free from the restraints. No response. Sophia threw the music box to the ground.
You're so selfish. You don't deserve to be my sister.
The shattered glass pierced my heart. The pain blurred my vision with tears. Before I completely lost consciousness, a pair of soft, warm hands suddenly grabbed my sleeve. Her eyes, glistening with tears, curved slightly, with a hint of pride.
Buy me some steamed buns, and I'll forgive you.
The shrill ring of the phone shattered the dream. My head was pounding, and I couldn't see the caller ID clearly.
Hello?
After a few seconds of silence, a weak female voice spoke.
Sis, where are the steamed buns you promised me?
The bottle of pills in my arms rolled to the floor. Pills scattered everywhere. Like clusters of blooming petals. After the spring rain. The branches that had withered all winter would indeed bloom again. And my sister. After a long coma, she finally woke from the nightmare. On a warm spring morning. We sat in a bustling breakfast shop.
Anna, you really don't need to wear that mask. In a novel, this would be your rebirth. Why would I be afraid of someone like Emily, who's destined to be a minor character?
The steaming buns were served. She picked one up, blew on it twice, and popped it into her mouth.
Besides, except for those 2 moles, how do you even resemble Emily?
The fresh juice burned her mouth, making her wince, her eyes watering. But it was different from before. Now, her eyes had a spark. When she smiled, they curved like crescent moons.
Sister, let's go visit David later, okay?
David was Michael's younger brother. He was also a victim of school bullying. Because of his introverted nature, he was often called names and bullied by his classmates. During the final exams of his second year in high school, he missed the exam due to a prank by his classmates. When his father found out, instead of defending him, he slapped him several times in front of everyone. That night, after all the students had left the school, he climbed to the rooftop alone. And fell into the darkness. On the black tombstone, the young boy's face bore a faint smile. Michael stood in front of the tombstone, speaking slowly.
He took this photo himself before it happened. I guess he had already made up his mind.
Sophia bent down and placed the flowers under the photo. The raised scars on her wrist caught Michael's eye.
Yeah. Everyone makes different choices. Some are reborn in the darkness, while others choose to find peace. It's not that they are too fragile. It's just that the long road ahead. Not everyone who endures the night will see their own spring.